the rules of origin of the USMCA. Welcome. The North American Free Trade Agreement, commonly known as NAFTA, has changed. Now, it's the new agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, USMCA. In the same way that the agreement's name was changed and the rules are changed too. As you know, the three nations that jointly integrate the commercial bloc of North America constitute an important economic zone, which is considered the third most important market worldwide, especially when it comes to the automotive sector. The National Auto Parts Association, also known as Industria Nacional de Autopartes in Spanish, is a formal and active participant in the war room, in the Cuarto de Junto, an advisory body that represents Mexico's agenda in the renegotiation of NAFTA, including that of the automotive sector. The association's participation has been a key in strengthening our sector under the agreements reached with respect to the new rules of origin. The following are the most significant changes in the rules of origin that impact the automotive sector. Let's begin by noting that under NAFTA 1.0, the current agreement, there is a single rule of origin that covers light vehicles and pickups, heavy-duty vehicles, and auto parts. This states that the regional value content RVC requirement should total 62.5%, 60%, and an average of 60% respectively. In other words, in the case of light vehicles and pickups, they should contain at least 62.5% of materials and components manufactured in any of the three NAFTA countries. Under the USMCA or NAFTA 2.0, those values under the rule of origin have been modified and new guidelines are added in 4 rules. First rule, the regional value content under the net cost method will pass from 62.5% to 75%. This adjustment will be carried out gradually, starting with the 66% when the USMCA enters into force. The proportion for the regional value content will gradually increase over the next 3 years until it reaches 75%. Second rule, 70% of steel and 70% of aluminum purchases carried out by the original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, must be originated from any of the 3 countries of the USMCA. Third rule, regarding the labor value content, or LVC, it is established that 40% of the light vehicle and 45% of pickup must be manufactured in an area like Canada or USA by automotive workers whose wages must be equal to or greater than $16 per hour. These proportional values will be integrated as follows. 25% and 30% respectively will be derived from materials cost plus wages or base salaries, in addition to transportation expenses or manufacturing costs. An important aspect to highlight regarding materials is that OEMs may add the value of importing components and raw materials purchased by the Mexican suppliers to suppliers based in the United States and Canada. 10% will be considered as R&D, IT, human resources, and software expenses, hardware excluded. 5% will be added in the event that an OEM produces 100,000 engines, 100,000 automotive transmissions, or 25,000 lithium batteries in either the United States of America or Canada, countries where the automotive wage is $16 per hour. This rule starts with 30% upon entry into force and gradually increases until it reaches 45% in 2024. Fourth rule, a light vehicle and pickup must contain 7 core parts, including its principal parts called key parts. These 7 core parts and key parts have to be manufactured in any of the 3 countries of the USMCA. The mechanism of the 4 previous rules is the same for heavy-duty vehicles, but with the following changes. The RVC net cost changes from 60% to 70% within a 7-year period. The labor value content requirement provides that 45% of the vehicle must be manufactured in an area where the automotive worker is paid a wage equal to or greater than $16 per hour. This guideline is similar to that applicable in the pickups. 70% of steel and 70% of aluminum purchases carried out by the original equipment manufacturer, OEMs, must be originated from any of the 3 countries of the USMCA. Important note, for buses, farm tractors, heavy machinery, and special heavy vehicles will continue with the rules of NAFTA 1.0. For the auto parts sector, 3 categories were created. 1. Core. Parts, its key parts. 2. principal parts, and 3, complementary parts with some changes. Category 1, core parts and their key parts: axles, bodies, engines, steering and suspension systems, transmissions, and lithium batteries. Currently, the core parts and their key parts are in 60% of the RVC. With the entry into force of the USMCA, this proportion will have an annual increase beginning at 66% in the first year of entry, and then moving to 69% and 72%, recording a final 75% in the fourth year. Category 2, principal parts. While similar to the first category, the contribution of principal parts to the RVC net cost is capped at 70%. Once the commercial agreement is effective, the proportion will be set at 62.5%, increasing annually to 65%, 67.5%, and 70%. Some auto parts within the category include brakes, airbags, and seatbelts, among others. Category 3, complementary parts. The contribution of the category to the RVC net cost has a maximum limit of 65%. From the beginning of the commercial agreement, it will have to comply with 62.5%, next year 63%, and next year with 64%, and finally reaching the goal of 65% at the next year. In this last category, we can find auto parts such as audio and telematics, lighting, electronics and electrical, control panel, among others. For more details about these 3 special rules, please contact us. In the event that the new rules of origin are not met, the most favored nation's tariffs will have to be paid: 2.5% light vehicles, 25% pickups, 2.5% trucks, 25% Thorntons, 2.2% average auto parts. For any further questions or information about these provisions applicable to the automotive industry or for any other purpose under the USMCA, please get in touch with us. INA, Industria Nacional de Autopartes AC, www.ina.com.mx.